large crowds turned out in anti-racism protests across Britain on Wednesday, a challenge to planned far-right demonstrations after more than a week of violent riots and attacks across the country targeting Muslims and migrants. Hundreds denounced racism at a gathering in Liverpool, chanting slogans and waving banners. And in London, aerial footage showed Walthamstow in the city's northeast flooded with anti-racism protesters, a mix of Muslims, anti-racist and anti-fascist groups, left-wing organisations and locals.
We want to unite. We want to send a clear message that these are our streets. We've worked hard to create unity and we have a community. We're not going to let fascists, we're not going to let racists and the far right march here.
It's time to move on from this. I can't believe it's happening again. I was around in Thatcher years. I can't believe we used to get up in the anti-Nazi marches and here we are again.
Britain has been roiled in violent clashes last week after 3 young girls were killed in a stabbing in the northwest city of Southport. A wave of false messaging online wrongly identified the suspected killer as an Islamist migrant. Ahead of Wednesday, there were reports anti-Muslim protesters would attack a list of immigration centres, migrant support centres and specialist law firms. Many shops closed early and some boarded up windows. By nightfall on Wednesday, there were no signs that large far-right groups had gathered, except for disturbances in some communities. Authorities say a standing army of around 6,000 police officers were ready to respond to any violence. There's also increased security at mosques across the country. These places of prayer have been pelted with rocks. At least 2 mosques in the north of England were targeted by violent mobs. At Liverpool's Al Rama Mosque, the largest in the city, a handful of worshippers have been sleeping inside at night, and most entrances have been blocked. Abdul Wasi Sufyan, a 20-year-old student who helps at the Al Rama, says he hasn't stepped outside his immediate neighbourhood out of fears for his safety.
Seeing the events that have just taken place in the city of Liverpool, and not just the city of Liverpool but in the UK as a whole, it's really scary seeing the people rioting, looting the shops.
Another local, Santosh Thomas, says it's not just Muslims who are afraid.
I'm from India. To be honest, I can't come out and tell to the protesters or the people who are running towards me, hundreds of crowds, that, oh no, I'm not a Muslim, I'm from India, please don't spare me. That's not possible. So everyone is scared.
Migration to Britain was a major factor in the 2016 vote for the UK to leave the European Union, and was also a key battleground in last month's election. The country's far-right Reform Party won around 4 million votes on calls for tighter border controls. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has labelled the recent unrest far-right thuggery and has warned rioters they would face lengthy jail terms.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz campaigned for a second day in the battleground state of Michigan Wednesday, with Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris as her freshly picked running mate.
It's been a pretty interesting 24 hours for me, I'll have to be honest.
The Harris campaign was putting Walz's Midwestern credentials to the test in parts of the country critical to the election. They rallied together in another swing state, Wisconsin, earlier in the day, where the former teacher, a National Guard veteran, took aim at Republican rival Donald Trump.
This guy weakens our country to strengthen his own hands. He mocks our laws. He sows chaos and division amongst the people. And that's to say nothing of the job he did as president.
Polls show Harris has erased Trump's lead, built up during the final weeks of Biden's campaign, and a re-energized Democratic Party has flooded her campaign with donations. In the 24 hours after announcing Walz as the vice presidential pick on Tuesday, they raised $36 million, according to her team.
Donald Trump intends to give tax breaks to billionaires and big corporations.
But in a reminder of how divisive the war in Gaza remains for the party, a group of pro-Palestinian hecklers briefly interrupted Harris's speech in Michigan. She moved past it by focusing on a Republican rival.
If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that, otherwise I'm speaking.
Meanwhile, Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, has been trailing Harris and Walz around the country, holding campaigns near their rallies, coming as Harris's surge appears to have rattled the Republican camp. In an unusual moment on Wednesday, Vance approached Air Force Two while Harris appeared to be in her motorcade on the tarmac in Wisconsin, where both sides campaigned in the town of Eau Claire. He explained his move at his rally.
We landed about the same time that she did, and I went over there because I thought it might be nice to check out this plane that's going to be mine in a few months if we all take care of business, and I think we will. But mostly, actually, I wanted to go and say hello to the journalists who are traveling along with the vice president because I figured they must be lonely because Kamala Harris doesn't take any questions.
Harris's campaign did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the incident, which several people traveling with the vice president said went unnoticed at the time.
July 2024 was the second hottest July on record, which ends a 13-month streak of record-breaking high temperatures. That's according to the EU's Copernicus Climate Change Service on Wednesday. The month was 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit above the pre-industrial average, still high, but also short of July in 2023. Beginning June last year, the streak saw each month become the hottest on record since 1940. Copernicus links high temperatures mainly to greenhouse emissions from fossil fuels. Julian Nicholas is a scientist with the service and pointed out that the recent streak went beyond the El Niño phenomenon.
I think that's really something to keep in mind. I think it was the streak of record of global temperature record was in part related to development of the El Niño event in the Pacific. Has come to an end, but there is also other part of the world that are still very warm, much warmer than average. And again, the consequences of climate change will continue to be felt even beyond the end of the recent streaks of global temperature records. So that's really the context that we need to keep in mind.
Above average temperatures were seen around the globe, in southern and eastern Europe, the western US, western Canada, as well as Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and eastern Antarctica. Ocean surface temperatures also stayed unusually high in many areas.
What is still surprising at this time, as we speak in early August, is the very near record levels of sea surface temperature, global sea surface temperature. We are slightly below what we were a year ago.
China is speeding ahead of other countries in letting robo-taxis take to the streets. The autonomous cabs are now a common sight in the central city of Wuhan.
Autonomous driving has just been launched.
Run by tech giant Baidu, they don't have any human driver, though a service assistant can always be contacted. All that puts China not only at the cutting edge of technology, but also social change. Taxi drivers Reuters spoke to, but weren't allowed to film, said the robots had taken a big share of short-distance trips and were hitting their incomes. With Baidu planning to expand to 100 cities by 2030, that has cab drivers across the country worried. In Beijing, Jun Tianqian at the Economist Intelligence Unit says officials will be watching very carefully.
The government will increase its intervention in the market by, for example, limiting the quotas of robo-taxis on the road, for example. And it is probably also will be stepping up its support for the employment of those drivers that could be losing their jobs.
It's not just taxi drivers that are worried. Robots are also taking over as driving instructors. At this driving school near the capital, they started automating instruction in 2019. Most students now opt for robot teachers, and pass rates are said to have risen. Manager Zhang Yang says the school already needs fewer instructors as a result.
Regarding labour costs, there are definitely savings. With our current training model, students learn independently of instructors, which also elevates the ability of students to learn on their own. During training, instructors play a supporting role, while our AI system in the car gives key training and operation pointers, so the instructors assist students in their learning. This significantly reduces the ratio of instructors needed.
In June, China gave 9 automakers approval to test advanced driverless systems on public roads. Then, last month, it published draft regulations for their use in public transport and ride-hailing. With a slew of local testing projects now underway, the rise of the robots looks very unlikely to stop.
Some winemakers in Hungary are harvesting grapes up to a month earlier than usual. after July was reported to be the country's hottest month since temperature tracking began in 1901. Scientists say if the trend continues, Hungary could become too hot for producing white wine, including the renowned Tokaj. That's put pressure on Hungarian producers to adapt. Over 2/3 of Hungarian wine producers grow grapes for white wines. This is Laszlo Kerek, a 35-year grape-growing veteran. He is certain of the cause of Hungary's new reality.
The reason is global warming, nothing else. There is no winter anymore. The winter is the autumn now. There is no precipitation.
Kerek says he had to harvest Ersé Oliver, a popular Hungarian grape, in early August instead of at the end of the month. Hungary's winemaking regions have seen an increase of 25% in growing degree days, a metric denoting heat accumulation until crops reach maturity. That's according to Peter Szabo, a climate scientist at Eötvös Loránd University.
Our models show that heat sums will keep rising, and Hungary's climate will not be ideal for white wine at all.
Szabo suggests white winemakers may need to switch to producing red wine, a variety more suitable to warmer climates. But some winemakers think they will be able to adapt. Peter Varga is the owner of Varga Winery, which sells 15 million bottles annually. His winery is already implementing strategies, like minimizing direct sunlight exposure on grapes and planting new vines on east-facing slopes instead of south-facing ones.
It looks like we will be the new Mediterranean region, and the Mediterranean will be the new North Africa desert. So this shift might not necessarily be unwelcome for Hungarian winemaking, but we need to adapt to it.
Soufiane Erbakali retained his Olympic men's 3,000-meter steeplechase title to deliver Morocco's first medal of the Games on Wednesday. Meanwhile, Ethiopian world record holder Lamika Girma was taken to hospital after a horrific fall. Erbakali clocked a time of 8 minutes 6.05 seconds as American Kenneth Rooks took silver and Kenya's Abraham Kibiwot claimed bronze. The win was overshadowed by the injury to Girma, who tripped over a barrier on the last lap and fell hard to the track, lying motionless as medical staff rushed to attend to him. His eyes were open and he was wearing a neck brace as staff members carried him off on a stretcher, and a medic told Reuters that he was taken to a hospital. French media reported he was conscious and speaking.
Stocks ended lower on Wednesday as technology shares declined, with investor jitters stoked by weak demand in a 10-year Treasury auction. The Dow dropped 0.6%, the S&P 500 shed 0.75%, and the tech-heavy Nasdaq lost 1%. The indexes started the day higher, but began to lose steam in afternoon trading, paring gains further after the Treasury auction. A steep global stock sell-off earlier this week rattled investors who have been worried about a possible U.S. recession and weaker than expected forecasts from U.S. companies. But George Ball, chairman of Sanders Morris Harris, said that recessions are cyclical and, in that regard, not necessarily cause for major concern.
We've been in a prosperous phase for a long time. The odds start to stack up to a 50-50 chance of a recession with stock prices and multiples of earnings comparatively high as of this point. So it's a cautionary time, not a panic time. And the Monday sell-off, I think, was more of a stock market financial phenomenon than an economic or one that has some longer-term significance to it.
Stocks on the move Wednesday included Walt Disney, down roughly 4.5% after it predicted a moderation in demand at its theme park business in the coming quarters. Shares of fellow entertainment company Warner Brothers Discovery ended the session higher, but tumbled more than 8% in after-hours trading after missing Wall Street expectations for quarterly revenue.
and shares of AI high-flyer Supermicro fell 20% after the server company reported quarterly adjusted gross margins below estimates. Rival Dell dropped more than 7%.
Intel shareholders sued the company on Wednesday. They said the Silicon Valley chipmaker fraudulently concealed problems. That's led it to post weak results, cut jobs, and suspend its dividend, and caused its market value to sink over $32 billion in one day. Intel has struggled to fend off competition from rival chipmakers and benefit from the booming AI market. The lawsuit was filed in San Francisco federal court against Intel, its CEO, Patrick Gelsinger, and his chief financial officer. Shareholders said they were blindsided when Intel revealed a week ago that its business of making chips for clients was, in their words, floundering, and that it was costing billions of dollars in extra investment, even as revenue declined. Shareholders added that the company's materially false or misleading statements on the business and its manufacturing capabilities inflated its stock price this year. There was no immediate comment from the firm. The lawsuit came after an announcement last week that Intel would suspend its dividend and lay off over 15% of its workforce, more than 15,000 jobs. That's all part of a restructuring meant to save $10 billion in 2025. Shares in the firm have fallen over 34% since the announcement.
A team of researchers in Scotland is hoping to revolutionise data security by developing a potentially unhackable national quantum network. The Integrated Quantum Networks Hub, or IQN, will be led by a group from Heriot-Watt University in Edinburgh. It is one of 5 hubs announced by the UK government as part of a $200 million government investment. The aim of the IQN is to boost cybersecurity by enhancing defences against hacking and connecting future quantum computers. Charlotte Dean, Executive Chair of the UK's Engineering and Physical Sciences Research Council, says programming on a quantum computer is very different from programming on a classical computer.
There is a property that we can use that allows us to program things in a different way, which means we can do things faster or we can solve different types of problems.
So what can a quantum internet do? Gerald Buller, who will lead the IQN hub, explains.
Potentially, you can have ultra-secure system. Essentially, it gives a degree of security that is extremely high and potentially unhackable, but it would have to be used in certain ways to do that.
The quantum internet uses principles of quantum mechanics and artificial intelligence to create unbreakable encryption keys.
In other quantum technologies such as sensing and imaging, AI is already being used to take the data and make it process it faster and get more believable results. So AI is already here with quantum technology. It remains to be seen just how big a part it will play in the quantum internet of the future.
The project also aims to tackle cybercrime, projected to cost the world about $9.5 trillion a year by the end of 2024, Authentic ID's State of Identity fraud report says. Cybersecurity expert Andrew Patel cautions that no system will ever be impervious to the main weak link in the chain, people.
A quantum internet wouldn't prevent other common cyber attacks, such as social engineering, exploits, or malware. The weak link is often people, and people being tricked into doing things that they didn't want to.
The UK hopes these new quantum hubs will pave the way for the country to become a global leader in quantum innovation. The hubs are expected to drive entrepreneurship, workforce development, and regulatory input into the UK's rapidly emerging quantum industry.
Megastar Taylor Swift's 3 concerts in Vienna were abruptly cancelled after Austrian police arrested 2 people suspected of plotting an attack. The Austrian government confirmed a planned attack at Ernst Happel Stadium. That's according to concert organizer Barracuda.music, saying in a Facebook post on Wednesday, quote, with confirmation from government officials of a planned terrorist attack. We have no choice but to cancel the 3 scheduled shows for everyone's safety. The organizer added that all tickets for the shows would be automatically refunded. Austria's Chancellor Karl Nehammer said in a post on social media platform X that a tragedy was prevented. Austrian police on Wednesday detained 2 people suspected of plotting attacks on concerts, according to the Director General for Public Security. The 3 SWIFT concerts were scheduled to take place from Thursday to Saturday, with police expecting around 65,000 attendees each day. They are part of the record-breaking Eras tour by the American singer-songwriter set to conclude on December 8th.
It was a massive policing operation. I'm really pleased with how it went. And we put thousands of officers on the street, and I think the show of force from the police and frankly the show of unity from communities together defeated the challenges that we've seen. And it went off very peacefully last night. A couple of locations we had some local criminals turn out and try and create a bit of antisocial behaviour, and we arrested a few of them. But it was a very successful night, and the fears of sort of extreme right disorder were abated. So a successful operation thanks to communities and police. These are criminals, they're thugs, they're not patriots. We've been out doing some dawn raids this morning. You're not going to get away with this. You're on body-worn video, you're on CCTV, frankly you're on national TV. You're going to get arrested and you're going to prison for years.
We want to unite. We want to send a clear message that these are our streets. We've worked hard to create unity, and we have a community. We're not going to let fascists, we're not going to let racists and the far right march here.
It's absolutely disgraceful, and I'm standing here against that, and with the community here to show that, you know, we're totally opposed to fascism then, and we're totally opposed to fascism now.
I can't believe it's happening again. I was around in Thatcher years. I can't believe we used to get up in the anti-Nazi marches, and here we are again.
It was upsetting because the whole world now speaks about freedom of choice, and they ask everyone to express themselves and everything. So when I saw this, I felt that why specifically this happens with hijab. It was very upsetting, to be honest.
First of all, it's a violation of the Olympic Charter, and we are here at the Olympics, and so you shouldn't be violating the Olympic Charter as the host nation. It's also a violation of the fundamental right to freedom of religion. Athletes shouldn't have to choose between their religion and the sport that they love and excel at. And then finally, it's a violation of women's rights, because these are women who are being discriminated against and excluded from sport.
I'm proud because I'm showing that hijab is not a barrier. You can practice sport while wearing hijab. You can be Olympic athlete while wearing hijab, and you can look good. You still take care of yourself, of how you look, of how you tie your hijab. So that's it.
Going back home and see what's happening there and how we can organize ourselves to get out of the trouble that we are in. Thank you very much. Please. Did I take it? You have both? Both? Sorry, camera dono camera. Thank you.
Have a nice flight, sir. Have a nice flight.